The sound of Janelle's laughter drifted from our kitchen window as I crawled out from under my pickup truck, grease coating my hands like guilt. It was past midnight, and my wife was giggling like a schoolgirl at something on her phone. That laugh used to be mine. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. I wiped my hands on an old rag and walked toward the house, boots crunching on the gravel driveway of our modest suburban home. Through the window, I could see her silhouetted against the warm kitchen light, phone pressed to her ear, twirling a strand of blonde hair around her finger, the way she used to when we were dating 20 years ago. "Russell, you're terrible," she whispered into the phone. Russell Baird, her boss at Meridian Marketing, the slick-talking executive with his expensive suits and even more expensive car who'd been finding excuses to call my wife at all hours for the past 3 months. I stood there in the shadows of our driveway, listening to my 44-year-old wife flirt like a teenager with another man. The woman I'd built this life with, who I'd supported through college while working construction, who'd promised to love me through better or worse. "No, Trent's outside working on that old truck again," she said, her voice dripping with disdain. "He's always covered in grease these days. It's like living with a mechanic." I'm a structural engineer, not a mechanic. I own a successful firm that employs 12 people. But apparently, getting my hands dirty maintaining the truck I've driven for 15 years made me beneath her now that she was climbing the corporate ladder. "Tomorrow night? The Riverside Gala?" Her voice pitched higher with excitement. "But that's so exclusive. Are you sure you can get me in?" I'd asked her about that gala 2 weeks ago. Thought it might be nice for us to attend together, network a little, maybe remember what it felt like to be a team. She'd told me it was invitation only and she couldn't get tickets. "What should I wear?" she giggled. "Something that will make you forget your own name?" My hands clenched into fists. 20 years of marriage, and this is what it had come to. My wife planning her outfit to seduce another man while I stood outside our home like a stranger. I walked quietly to the side of the house where I kept my tools, my mind racing. The rational part of me said to go inside and confront her, demand the truth, try to salvage what was left of our marriage. But a darker voice was whispering something else entirely. If Janelle wanted to play games, I could play games too. The next morning, Janelle was already gone when I woke up. No coffee made, no note, just the lingering scent of her expensive perfume and an empty house that felt more like a crime scene than a home. I sat at our kitchen table, staring at the spot where she'd been standing the night before, and tried to figure out when everything had gone wrong. Was it when she got the promotion 6 months ago? When she started working late every night? Or had it been happening slowly, so gradually that I'd missed all the signs? My phone buzzed with a text from my best friend Eli Martinez, who owned a boxing gym downtown. "Coffee? You look like hell lately." I met Eli at Murphy's Diner, a greasy spoon that served the best breakfast in town and didn't judge you for looking like you'd been hit by a truck. Eli was already there when I arrived, his dark hair still damp from his morning workout, studying me with the concerned expression of someone who'd known me since high school. "All right, what's eating you?" he asked before I'd even sat down. "That obvious? You look like someone stole your dog and burned down your house. Talk to me." I told him everything. The late-night phone calls, the mysterious work events, the way Janelle had been treating me like an embarrassment instead of a husband. Eli listened without interrupting, his jaw getting tighter with each detail. "Man, I'm sorry," he said when I finished. "What are you going to do?" "I don't know yet. Part of me wants to confront her, but another part wants to see how far she'll take this." "You thinking about following her tonight?" The thought had crossed my mind. Maybe. I need to know for sure before I blow up my marriage over suspicions. Want backup? That's why Eli had been my best friend for 30 years. No judgment, no lectures about the sanctity of marriage, just solid support when I needed it most. Thanks, but this is something I need to see for myself. That evening, I told Janelle I was working late on a project. She barely looked up from her makeup mirror, too busy transforming herself into someone I barely recognized. The black dress was new, expensive, and cut in a way that left very little to the imagination. "Don't wait up," she said, not meeting my eyes. "These networking events run late." "Have fun networking," I replied, the word tasting like poison in my mouth. I followed her at a distance, staying 3 cars back as she drove across town to the Riverside Hotel. The gala was in full swing when I parked across the street, and through the floor-to-ceiling windows, I could see Janelle making her entrance like she owned the place. She didn't see me slip in through the service entrance. One of the perks of being an engineer, you know how buildings work, including which doors are usually unlocked for vendors and staff. I positioned myself behind a pillar where I could see the main ballroom, and it didn't take long to spot her. She was at the bar, laughing at something Russell Baird was whispering in her ear. He was everything I wasn't, tall, silver-haired, wearing a tuxedo that probably cost more than my truck. And then I saw it. Russell's hand on the small of her back sliding lower. Janelle leaning into him, her hand on his chest. The way she looked at him like he was the only person in the room. But what really destroyed me was when the band started playing and Russell led her onto the dance floor. She melted into his arms like she belonged there, like the past 20 years had been nothing but a warm-up act for this moment. I pulled out my phone and started recording. They danced for 3 songs, getting closer with each one. By the 3rd song, they were barely moving, just swaying together while Russell whispered things in her ear that made her laugh and blush. And then he kissed her. Not a friendly peck, not an accidental brush of lips, a full, passionate kiss that she returned without hesitation, her arms wrapping around his neck like she'd been waiting for this moment her entire life. I kept recording, even though each second felt like a knife twisting in my chest. When they finally broke apart, Janelle looked around nervously, but Russell just smiled and said something that made her relax. "Don't worry about him," I heard Russell say as they walked past my hiding spot. "Your husband's probably at home playing with his tools like always. Some men are meant for greatness, others are meant to fix things." Janelle laughed. "You're terrible. But you're right. Trent's a good man, but he's not exactly executive material." "You deserve better," Russell said, his hand finding hers. "You deserve someone who can give you the life you want." "Maybe I do," she whispered back. I waited until they left together before making my own exit. The drive home was a blur of rage and heartbreak, my hands shaking so badly I had to pull over twice to collect myself. When I finally got home, Janelle's car wasn't in the driveway. Janelle came home at 3 in the morning, slipping into bed like a ghost and pretending to be asleep when I stirred. She smelled like Russell's cologne and lies, but I didn't say anything. Not yet. The next few days were a masterclass in deception. Janelle acted like nothing had changed, chatting about her day over dinner, asking about my work, playing the role of devoted wife while planning her next betrayal. But I was planning too. I started with research. Russell Baird, 49 years old, divorced twice, regional director at Meridian Marketing. He lived in a downtown penthouse, drove a Tesla, and had a reputation for sleeping with his female employees. Janelle wasn't his first conquest, just his latest. I also did some digging into Meridian Marketing itself. The company was family-owned, conservative, and prided itself on traditional values. They had a strict policy about workplace relationships, especially between supervisors and subordinates. Then I called my friend Miguel Santos, who ran a computer repair shop and knew more about digital surveillance than most FBI agents. "I need to clone my wife's phone," I told him over beers at Murphy's. "Jesus, Trent, you sure about this?" "She's already checked out of our marriage. I just need proof for the divorce lawyer." Miguel nodded slowly. "Bring me her phone when she's asleep. I can have it done in 20 minutes. That night, while Janelle showered, I grabbed her phone and drove to Miguel's shop. 20 minutes later, I had complete access to her text messages, emails, and photos. What I found was worse than I'd imagined. The affair had been going on for 4 months, not 3. They'd been to hotels, his penthouse, even a weekend getaway to Chicago that she'd told me was a work conference. The messages were explicit, passionate, and full of plans for their future together. But the worst part was how they talked about me. "Poor Trent," Russell had texted. "Still thinks he married a small-town girl instead of a woman destined for bigger things." "He's sweet, but so naive," Janelle had replied. "He actually thinks I'm happy in that little house, playing housewife to a man who gets excited about bridge construction." "When are you going to tell him?" "Soon. I just need to figure out the best way to do it without losing half my assets." I sat in Miguel's shop, reading message after message, watching my marriage dissolve in real time. They were planning to go public with their relationship after Janelle filed for divorce. Russell had already promised her a promotion and a corner office. "You all right, man?" Miguel asked, seeing my expression. "Just peachy," I said, my voice hollow. "How hard would it be to forward these messages to someone else?" "Depends on who you want to send them to." I smiled for the first time in weeks, but it wasn't a pleasant expression. "Everyone." I spent the weekend planning my strategy like a military operation. Janelle thought I was working on project blueprints, but I was actually mapping out the complete destruction of her carefully constructed lie. Monday morning, I sent anonymous emails to 3 key people: Meridian Marketing's CEO, Russell's boss, the head of HR, and Janelle's biggest client, Patricia Williams, who ran a conservative nonprofit that valued family integrity above all else. The emails contained screenshots of the most damning text messages, photos from the gala — I'd enhanced the video quality — and a timeline of their affair that coincided with several major business deals Janelle had supposedly won through her exceptional networking skills. By Tuesday afternoon, Russell had been called into an emergency meeting with the board of directors. By Wednesday, Janelle was sitting in HR explaining why she'd failed to disclose her relationship with her supervisor. By Thursday, Patricia Williams had pulled her account from Meridian Marketing, citing concerns about professional integrity. I watched it all unfold from the sidelines, saying nothing to Janelle about my involvement. She came home each night more stressed, more panicked, convinced that someone at the office was spreading rumors about her. "It's probably Vera," she said over dinner Thursday night, referring to her friend who worked in HR. "She's always been jealous of my success." "I'm sure it will blow over," I said, cutting my steak with surgical precision. "The truth has a way of coming out eventually." Friday morning, Russell was suspended pending a full investigation. Janelle called in sick, spending the day pacing our house like a caged animal, her phone buzzing constantly with calls from coworkers and friends wanting to know if the rumors were true. That evening, she finally cracked. "Someone's trying to destroy me," she said, tears streaming down her face. "Someone recorded Russell and me at the gala and sent it to the board. They're saying I slept my way to my promotion." "Did you?" I asked calmly. The question hung in the air between us like a loaded gun. Janelle's face went white, then red, then white again. "How can you ask me that? I'm your wife." "That's not an answer." She stared at me for a long moment, and I could see the exact second she realized I knew everything. Her shoulders sagged, the fight going out of her like air from a punctured tire. "Trent, I can explain." "Can you? Can you explain 4 months of lying to my face? Can you explain planning your exit strategy while pretending to love me? Can you explain how you were going to take half of everything I've worked for while calling me naive behind my back?" Her mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. "How did you—" "No, let's just say your phone security isn't as good as you think it is." The color drained from her face completely. "You've been spying on me?" "I've been protecting myself from you." We stared at each other across the kitchen table where we'd shared thousands of meals, and I realized our marriage was already over. Had been over for months. I was just the last to know. "What do you want?" she whispered. "I want you out of my house." "Trent, please, we can work through this. It was a mistake, a moment of weakness." 4 months isn't a moment. It's a choice, and you made yours. She tried tears, then anger, then bargaining, but I'd moved past all of that. I'd grieved our marriage while she was busy planning its funeral. "I'll fight you," she said finally, her true nature emerging. "I'll take half of everything. The house, the business, your retirement. I'll make sure you regret this." I smiled, and she actually flinched. "You're welcome to try, but you might want to check your employment status first." By Monday morning, Janelle was unemployed. Meridian Marketing had terminated both her and Russell for violating company policy, and word was already spreading through their professional network. In a city the size of ours, reputation was everything, and hers was now radioactive. She moved in with her sister temporarily, taking only her clothes and personal items. I'd had the locks changed, and my lawyer had already filed the divorce papers citing adultery, which in our state meant she wasn't entitled to alimony. But I wasn't done. Not even close. The problem with destroying someone's life is that they tend to get desperate, and desperate people do stupid things. Janelle's stupid thing was trying to turn our mutual friends against me by painting herself as the victim of an abusive, controlling husband who'd driven her into another man's arms. It might have worked, except I had 4 months of text messages proving otherwise. The first friend she approached was Lisa Chen, who'd been in our wedding party and hosted our anniversary parties for the past 5 years. Lisa called me the day after Janelle's sob story, her voice tight with anger. "Is it true?" she asked without preamble. "Did you really hire someone to spy on Janelle and destroy her career? Did she mention the part where she was planning to divorce me and take half my assets while screwing her boss for 4 months?" Silence. Then, "She said you were making that up. I can send you the screenshots if you want proof." More silence. "This is so messed up, Trent. I don't know what to believe anymore." "Believe the evidence, Lisa. It doesn't lie." But the damage was done. Lisa chose to stay neutral, which in friend politics meant choosing Janelle's side. So did Mark and Susan Rodriguez, our couple friends who'd been part of our regular game night crew. They didn't want to get involved in the drama and pick sides, except they had picked a side. They'd picked the side of the woman who'd been lying to all of us for months, who'd made fools of everyone who'd trusted her. The final straw came when Tom Bradley, my former best man and business partner in a weekend construction venture, called to tell me he was pulling out of our project. "I can't be associated with this mess," he said. "Janelle says you've been emotionally abusive for years, that you controlled her finances and isolated her from her friends. My wife doesn't want me doing business with someone like that." "Someone like what, Tom? Someone whose wife cheated on him? Someone who would destroy a woman's career over a mistake." "A mistake? Is that what we're calling adultery now?" "Look, I don't know what really happened between you two, but the way you handled this, it's not right, man. You could have just divorced her quietly. Like she was planning to do to me, after cleaning out our accounts and destroying my reputation." But Tom had already made up his mind. In his version of events, I was the villain who'd overreacted to his wife's indiscretion and ruined her life out of spite. That night, sitting alone in my house with a beer and the silence of 20 years of friendship dissolving around me, I realized something important. I didn't care about being the good guy anymore. If they wanted a villain, I'd give them a villain. The opportunity came 3 weeks later at Murphy's Diner, the same place where I'd told Eli about Janelle's affair. I was having breakfast alone when Tom, Mark, and Susan walked in together, probably planning to discuss how terrible I was over pancakes and coffee. They saw me immediately, but tried to pretend they hadn't. Tom steered the group toward a booth on the far side of the restaurant, but I wasn't in the mood for games. I picked up my coffee and walked over to their table. Mind if I join you? Seems like you've been talking about me a lot lately. The three of them looked like deer caught in headlights. Susan recovered first, her face flushing with righteous indignation. We don't have anything to say to you, Trent. Really? Because you've had plenty to say about me to everyone else in town. Mark shifted uncomfortably. Look, we're just trying to stay out of your personal business. By taking Janelle's side and spreading her lies, that's staying out of it? They're not lies, Tom said, his voice getting louder. Janelle showed us the texts you sent her, the threats, the financial control. What texts? I pulled out my phone. Because I have every message I've sent to Janelle since this started, and there aren't any threats. Want to see them? Tom's confidence wavered slightly, but Susan jumped in. She's scared of you, Trent. She said you've been stalking her, following her to work. I followed her once, to a hotel where she was screwing her boss. Everything else is in her imagination. You destroyed her career. Susan's voice was shrill now, drawing stares from other diners. You sent private photos to her employer. I sent evidence of workplace misconduct to the people responsible for investigating workplace misconduct. If that destroyed her career, maybe she shouldn't have been screwing her supervisor. The entire diner had gone quiet now, everyone listening to our conversation. Mark looked mortified, but Tom was just getting started. You're a piece of work, you know that? He said, standing up. 20 years of marriage, and this is how you handle problems? By destroying the woman you supposedly loved? The woman I loved faded 4 months ago when she started lying to my face every day. What's left is just someone who looks like her. You're sick, Susan spat. Janelle was right about you. You are controlling and abusive. Something snapped inside me. 20 years of friendship, of being there for these people through divorces and job losses and family losses. And this was how they repaid me, by believing the lies of a woman who'd made a fool of all of us. You want to know what's sick? I said, my voice carrying across the silent diner. What's sick is believing the sob story of a woman who spent 4 months planning to divorce her husband while emptying their bank accounts. What's sick is taking the side of someone who called her husband naive and pathetic behind his back while he supported her career for 20 years. I pulled up the screenshots on my phone and dropped it on their table. Read them. All of them. Every message where your friend Janelle laughed about how stupid I was, how she was going to take me for everything I had, how she couldn't wait to start her new life with Russell. The three of them stared at the phone like it was a snake. Tom reached for it first, his face going pale as he scrolled through the messages. This can't be real. Check the timestamps. Check the phone numbers. Call your friend Janelle and ask her if she wrote those messages. Mark took the phone next, then Susan. I watched 20 years of friendship fade in their eyes as they read Janelle's real thoughts about me, about our marriage, about the people stupid enough to believe her victim act. She said, Susan's voice was barely a whisper. She said you were the one who wanted the divorce. She said a lot of things, most of them lies. Tom looked up from the phone, his face gray. Trent, I'm sorry. We didn't know. Yes, you did. You knew me for 20 years, and you knew her for 20 years. You knew who we were, what our marriage was like. But when it came time to choose, you chose to believe the worst about me because it was easier than admitting you'd been fooled. I took my phone back and put it in my pocket. The diner was still silent, everyone pretending not to watch the drama unfolding in booth 7. You want to know the difference between Janelle and me? I said, looking at each of them in turn. When she betrayed me, I had evidence. When you betrayed me, I just had 20 years of friendship that apparently meant nothing. I walked back to my table, left money for my breakfast, and headed for the door. Behind me, I could hear Susan crying and Tom trying to call my name, but I didn't turn around. Some bridges are meant to be burned. 2 months after the divorce was finalized, I was a free man with a clear conscience and a plan for the final act of my revenge. Janelle had found a new job at a smaller marketing firm, but her reputation in the industry was still damaged. Russell had moved to another state after his divorce from his second wife cost him half his assets. But I wasn't satisfied. Not yet. The opportunity came when I learned that Janelle's new company was bidding on a major contract with the city for a tourism campaign. It was exactly the kind of high-profile project that could rehabilitate her career and get her back on track financially. It was also a project that required approval from the City Planning Commission, which included several members I'd worked with over the years as a structural engineer. I didn't have to say much. Just a casual mention over lunch that Meridian Marketing had terminated one of the key people working on the bid for ethical violations. A friendly heads up that they might want to do their due diligence on the new firm's personnel. The city pulled the contract 3 days before the final presentation. Janelle's new boss called her into his office the next morning. She was terminated for failure to disclose material information during the hiring process. Apparently, she'd left the ethics violation off her employment application. That afternoon, she called me for the first time since the divorce. "You bastard," she said, without preamble. "This was you, wasn't it?" "I have no idea what you're talking about." "The city contract. Someone told them about Meridian. That was you." "Janelle, I'm a structural engineer. I don't work in marketing." "Don't lie to me. You've been sabotaging me for months." "I've been protecting myself from you for months. There's a difference. I'm going to sue you. Harassment, stalking, interference with business relationships. With what money and what evidence? I haven't contacted you, your employers, or anyone else. If your past is catching up with you, that's not my fault." The line went quiet for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice was broken. "Why are you doing this to me? I know I hurt you, but this is destroying my life. You destroyed your own life the first time you lied to me. I'm just making sure everyone knows who you really are. I loved you, Trent. I made a mistake, but I did love you. No, you didn't. You loved the idea of me, the security I provided, the life we built together, but you never loved me. If you had, you wouldn't have been able to do what you did." "Please," she whispered. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Can't we move on?" "I have moved on. You should too." I hung up and blocked her number. It was time to close this chapter of my life for good. 3 weeks later, Eli called with interesting news. Janelle had been seen at various job interviews around town, but word of her terminations had spread through the local business community. No one wanted to hire someone with her reputation. "She's thinking about leaving town," he told me over beers at his gym, starting fresh somewhere else. "Good for her. You feel bad about any of this?" I thought about it for a moment, really considered whether I regretted the path I'd chosen. You know what I feel bad about? I feel bad that it took me 4 months to figure out what was happening. I feel bad that I wasted 20 years on someone who saw me as a stepping stone to something better. I feel bad that our mutual friends were so quick to believe her lies. But you don't feel bad about ruining her career? She ruined her own career when she decided to sleep with her boss. I just made sure there were consequences. Eli nodded slowly. "Fair enough. What's next for you?" "Next, I focus on my business, my real friends, and building a life that doesn't include people who think loyalty is optional." 6 months later, I was having dinner at the Riverside Hotel, the same place where I'd watched my marriage fade, when I saw them, Janelle and Russell, sitting at a corner table, looking nothing like the confident power couple they'd once imagined themselves to be. Russell looked older, worn down by his divorce and career troubles. Janelle looked thin, stressed, her designer clothes replaced by something from a department store clearance rack. They were arguing in hushed tones, their body language screaming desperation and mutual blame. I couldn't hear what they were saying, but I could guess. Two people who'd destroyed their lives for each other, discovering that their grand romance wasn't worth the price they'd paid. I could have left. Should have left. But curiosity got the better of me, and I found myself walking past their table on the way to the restroom, close enough to catch a few words. "Told me you'd handle the job situation," Janelle was saying. "Did what I could, but your reputation," Russell replied. "Should have stayed with Trent." That stopped me cold. I turned around and walked back to their table. "Excuse me," I said, and both of them looked up with expressions of pure horror. "I couldn't help but overhear. Did you just say you should have stayed with me?" Janelle's face went white. Russell started to stand up, but I put a hand on his shoulder and pushed him back down. "Please, don't get up on my account. I'm just curious about this revelation that maybe destroying our marriage wasn't the best decision you ever made." "Trent, please," Janelle whispered. "Not here." "Why not here? This is where it all started, isn't it? Where you decided I wasn't good enough for your new life." Russell finally found his voice. "Look, we don't want any trouble." "Trouble?" I laughed, and several other diners turned to look. "You think I'm trouble? That's rich, coming from someone who got fired for sleeping with his subordinate." "You destroyed our careers," Russell said, his voice getting stronger. "You couldn't handle losing your wife like a man, so you had to ruin both of us." "I didn't ruin anything. I just made sure the right people knew what kind of employees they had. If that ruined your careers, maybe you should have thought about that before you started screwing around." Janelle was crying now, but I felt nothing. No sympathy, no regret, no lingering love for the woman I'd once promised to cherish forever. "You want to know what I think?" I said, leaning down so only they could hear me. "I think you deserve each other. Two people who think loyalty and integrity are just words, who destroy everything good in their lives chasing something shinier. You're perfect together." I straightened up and looked around the restaurant at all the people pretending not to watch our little drama. "Ladies and gentlemen," I said, raising my voice so everyone could hear, "I'd like you to meet my ex-wife Janelle and her boyfriend Russell. They're a perfect example of what happens when you confuse lust with love and selfishness with ambition." The entire restaurant was staring now. Janelle buried her face in her hands, and Russell looked like he wanted to crawl under the table. They destroyed a 20-year marriage for 4 months of hotel rooms and lies. They lost their jobs, their reputations, and their self-respect for the chance to play house together. And now they're sitting here in the same place where they first betrayed everyone who trusted them, wondering why their fairy tale didn't have a happy ending. I pulled out my wallet and dropped a $100 bill on their table. "Dinner's on me. Consider it a divorce present." I walked out of the restaurant with my head high, leaving behind the wreckage of my old life and the two people who'd thought they could destroy me without consequences. Outside, I pulled out my phone and called Eli. "Want to grab a beer?" I asked. "Always. Good day or bad day?" "The best day I've had in a year." As I drove away from the Riverside Hotel, I caught a glimpse of Janelle and Russell in my rearview mirror, still sitting at their table, surrounded by the stares and whispers of a restaurant full of strangers who now knew exactly who they were. Some people say revenge is a dish best served cold, but sometimes it's best served hot, in front of an audience, with a side of public humiliation and a garnish of poetic justice. I'd spent 20 years being the good guy, the loyal husband, the man who always did the right thing. And where had it gotten me? Betrayed, lied to, and abandoned by the people I'd trusted most. But I'd learned something important in the process. Being good doesn't mean being weak, and protecting yourself doesn't make you the villain. Sometimes the best revenge is simply letting people see who someone really is, then stepping back and watching them destroy themselves. Janelle and Russell had wanted a new life together, free from the constraints of marriage and morality. I'd given them exactly what they wanted, along with all the consequences that came with it. They were free to be together now, free to build whatever kind of relationship they wanted. They just had to do it with ruined reputations, destroyed careers, and the knowledge that everyone who mattered knew exactly what kind of people they were. As for me, I was free too. Free from a marriage built on lies, free from friends who'd turned on me without evidence, free from the burden of caring about people who'd never really cared about me. I drove home to my quiet house, poured myself a drink, and sat on my back porch watching the sunset. For the first time in months, I felt at peace. Tomorrow, I'd start building a new life. Tonight, I'd enjoy the satisfaction of knowing that justice had been served, one public humiliation at a time.